Hello. So, I am often asked, well, maybe not often, but I am occasionally asked, that's not really truthful either. One time, a guy at a bar asked me if I could only have one cooker, what would I choose? I'm sure, in the throes of alcohol induced binge drinking, that I probably gave about 8 different answers that night, including things like a kettle or a stick. I've had a lot of time since then and am not currently drinking, so I have a pretty good idea of the scope of the question, the reason behind the question, and I'm hoping we'll be able to answer that here today. Hello and welcome back to Cold War Barbecue. Uh, it's been a little bit since we've had a video. It is the midst of the summer season, and we've been very busy with various different engagements as far as catering and those sorts of things are concerned. But wanted to put this video together for a while now, since I have more or less all of the types of cookers that I would want to feature on this type of video. Basically, the breakdown is as such, or the categories are as such. So, right now, I'm standing in front of this kamado grill, which we featured recently in a review. This is one of those categories. And when we're considering a cooker for barbecue, we're looking at a few different things, right? Can it smoke? Can it grill? The versatility category. We'll talk a little bit about price because that does factor in. But keep in mind that price alone is not the end all be all here. We're talking about one cooker. Conceivably, you could save up a little bit of money to get the one you want or the one you need. So price will be mentioned. We'll talk about it as far as rating these things, but it's not the end all be all category. Another category we're going to rate these on is output quality, the quality of the finished product, right? Which to me is one of the most important things for the backyard griller, backyard barbecuer, the pit master, right? You could say, okay, video over, it's grill XYZ, cooker XYZ. It's the best finished product as far as what we have shown, right? But there is a balance to be struck. Another item we're going to kind of mention is feasibility as far as being able to cook a fair amount of food at one time, right? Now, I'm not talking about having a commercial smoker that can do 60 briskets at once, right? I mean, generally speaking, the backyard pitmaster is not going to need something that large. But you don't want to be trapped with a cooker that can only do maybe one rack of ribs or hamburgers and hot dogs, right? You do need to be able to cook for your family, your friends, the get-together, what have you. Also, important to note, I am not specifically saying go buy this cooker. I'm not going to say buy this brand, anything like that. This is going to be more about the category or type of cooker. Okay, so in this case, it's not going to be go buy a Kamado Joe or a Franklin smoker or those sorts of things, right? This isn't an endorsement of any particular brand. This is just the type, right? And so it's kind of a broad category. As you've seen, I have several grills. I have numerous smokers. We're just going to kind of go into pros and cons and see if we can't get down to brass tacks on which one is best. Now, since I'm already standing here and I am lazy, I'm going to start with the Kamado, and we're going to kind of walk through pros and cons and kind of where I feel it sits, right? So when we look at versatility, can it grill? Absolutely. As far as a good sear on a steak, on a pork chop, something like that, it's fantastic, right? Can it smoke? Yes, it can. In fact, it does a very, very good job of it. It's very fuel efficient. Being able to put charcoal in there, control the dampers just so to where you get a nice, steady flow of smoke. And really using whatever wood that you want to for the chosen item to cook. It performs very, very, very well, admirably. So from a versatility standpoint, this thing's pretty awesome. Now, I don't know if you want to take away points for it being maybe a little bit more temperamental, a little harder to clean, those sorts of things. But to do the job, I mean, it fits the bill. When we talk about price, this is any kamado grill really is going to be higher than a Weber, right? They're going to be kind of pricey, and it kind of ranges. Now this one we got a tremendous deal on, and I often see, at least during sales, you'll see prices in the $500 range for something maybe this size, all the way up to $2,000, maybe more. I don't know. For some of the bigger ones, ones with more features, etc. So, I would say $500 is a pretty reasonable price for getting into smoking and grilling and having a good item to do it with. But you may disagree. As far as being able to make a lot of food, well, on this one, for this size, it's a pretty decently sized cooking grate. You could fit a smaller brisket on here. You could do probably comfortably 2 racks of St. Louis ribs plus maybe some sausage at the same time, or another smaller item. But it's not huge, right? So if you got a family of 3 or 4, probably everything you need for a meal. If it's for a big cookout and you've got 10 or 12 people coming over, it's gonna be a little tight, okay? Especially for long smokes. Now, hamburgers, hot dogs, if you're doing steak, you're doing fajitas, those sorts of things, probably not an issue. You're gonna cook quick enough that it's not gonna be a big deal. But for longer smokes, it is something to be aware of. You would have to do it in stages, basically. If you're gonna do a brisket, you're gonna do it the day before anyway. But you also have to think about that with a pork butt, or even ribs in this case, that you may potentially have to kind of stagger your cooks. So, important to note. Lastly, but not leastly, stupid. Finally, we'll talk about quality of the finished product. On this cooker, the finished product is fantastic. You saw us do one cut of meat that was kind of a combination of a sear and a slow cook, right, with the tri-tip. And it was fantastic. I mean, it's just amazing food, right? Since then, these have been test cooks. We haven't done videos or anything on them because I'm trying to get the feel for this grill. And you could argue maybe I should have shown some of that for trial and error purposes. But I, I don't like to do videos that might tarnish the image of a product or a type of product or things like that due to user error, right? If there's a problem with the cooker, absolutely I would show it, right? But I don't want my mistakes to influence people not to, pursue a particular product. It doesn't feel right. And so I wanted to kind of master this cooker a little bit before we got deeper into it. So, since then we have done a pork butt on here, I've done some ribs, and then various different things that I've seared, steaks, things like that. In all cases, the finished product was fantastic. On a pork butt, I get that nice, perfect, not really bark, but kind of that candy coating almost on the pork butt, right? Exactly like you'd expect. The product that came out of this was really pretty much every bit as good as an offset. Now, I haven't done a brisket yet. That is, I think, kind of the ultimate test for a backyard pit master, especially the kinds of people who watch this channel or some of the other big barbecue channels. I'm not meaning I'm implying that I'm a big barbecue channel, but I mean, you know, the actually good barbecue channels, not this one. Uh, you know, there's a lot of interest in brisket, and so we are going to try that. We're going to show that right now that I know the cooker. We're going to do a brisket on this and see how that turns out. But everything else has been just fantastic output quality. So good marks on this one for that. I'm not going to really do like a 1 to 5 rating system or anything on these. It's so subjective, right? So I will just say that this cooker excels in basically everything except the cook volume, right? Being able to cook a lot of stuff at once. So if that is your big time motivating factor, keep it in mind. We will sum up at the end and kind of go through all of this stuff, but you know, versatility, fantastic. Output quality, fantastic. Price, reasonable. Cook surface size, not great. All right, well, next on the list, probably the most common cooker out there, the backyard grill. Okay, in this case, the Expert Grill. You've seen the Weber, you've seen the smaller Expert Grill, all of those various different things. Now, let's be honest here. Um, the tiny Expert Grill, I know we're not talking about rating within categories, things like that, but that one probably loses out in a lot of ways just due to cook size, cook surface size, lack of versatility, those sorts of things. So you probably do still want to be in the at least $100 range on a grill, $100 to $200. So far, I haven't seen a whole lot of reason to go higher than that, but you know, maybe eventually. Regardless, we're going to just kind of talk about the commonalities of the platform itself, right? So when we talk about grills, from a versatility perspective, again, it's very high. We've got the ability to sear, you know, to do your basic backyard grilling. You also have a heck of an ability to do smoking on them, as we have demonstrated over and over again. It occurs to me, I don't know if we've done a long smoke on the Weber on the channel, so we might have to do that. But we've definitely shown it with the Expert Grill. When we talk about price, the grills are probably the best one, right? I mean, they're, again, my target is $100 to $200 for a grill. And so pretty easy to get into for anybody, right? Price is kind of not even something we even consider when we look at this stuff, because it's an afterthought for a lot of people. I do understand budgets are challenging, the economy sucks, and that's why we did a video on that $25 Expert Grill. But for feeding a lot of people or just using it very regularly, $100 to $200 is a pretty good investment, and it's going to last you a long time. You may notice a disproportionate number of jump cuts in this video, and that's because it's so hot outside, my cameras keep shutting down. I think it's about 3,000 degrees. It's in Freedom units. I think in Celsius that's like 7. When we talk about the cook size, it's very subjective, right? Very variable. Very variable. Weird. We've shown very small grills, but when we think about the average size grill, the $100 to $200 grill, it's pretty good. You can do a couple of pork butts. You can do 4 to maybe 5 racks of ribs at a time, a bunch of sausage. You can do briskets. You can maybe do 2 briskets if you really wanted to. So it definitely has that going for it. Obviously, from a versatility perspective, you got it nailed here, right? You can sear a steak as easily as you can smoke a pork butt. We've shown it. I mean, settled fact, right? But when we talk about the output quality, the finished product, the grill does a good job, okay? I mean, I've done the easier smoking stuff, your ribs, your pork butts, they turn out pretty good. It's a lot to manage, but Um, it, I would say for 99% of people that are cooking their backyard, this is fantastic quality product. I have done briskets on these before, in addition to the manageability, which I now realize needs to be its own category, and we'll revisit at the end. Uh, it's just, I haven't noticed as good of a bark on these. Um, Flavor quality's fine, texture's mostly fine. It's just not as good. Now, I spend most of my time on an offset or on a gravity smoker, so take my words with a grain of salt. Next up, we have our old standby, the gravity smoker. And we use an Old Country, but I mean, there are numerous other gravity smokers, charcoal fed gravity smokers out there. When we look at this categorically, from a versatility perspective, it's nearly zero. You cannot grill on this. You can smoke, and you can smoke nearly anything extraordinarily well. But grilling is just completely out of the question on this unit. When we talk about the uh, the cook size, it's fantastic, right? It's 3 shelves. They're very large shelves. You can do a lot of food in a in one go. So that kind of makes up for it, right? So big marks, high marks, what have you, uh, for this on that. From a price perspective, it's high, right? I think this one's about $1,200 normally. I've seen charcoal gravity fed smokers going for, $500 to $600, but it's definitely more of an investment than a grill is. So if you plan on doing primarily smoking, I think that it's a good option. But if you want to be able to grill or you want any of that additional benefit, probably not what you're looking for. Finally, the finished product on this, well, you've seen it. It's fantastic. For pork, it's nearly perfect. But even brisket, with some work and some tweaks and things like that, it also turns out fantastic on this. So if you are going to do the majority of your backyard cooking as smoking, you don't care as much about the grilling, or you're gonna buy another grill, which defeats the entire purpose of this video, so don't do that. Um, then this is a good option, good idea. Finally, we have the offset. In this case, it's my custom offset. I've got a big catering deal tomorrow, and so very shortly I'll be firing this up. But we've also shown the Old Country Brazos. That's kind of my go-to as far as a backyard barbecue is concerned, regardless of which one it is. And it could be, all the way to the as low as the Brazos and up to multi-thousand-dollar backyard offsets or custom cookers like this. Um, for the most part, a well-built offset, we're going to just treat it as, an all-inclusive category, okay? Now, from a cost perspective, this is high. I know you're probably seeing offsets at Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever, that start at $200 or $300. Do not buy those. They are garbage. They're made of stamped sheet metal, right? Basically kind of like what the grills are, except they're expecting you to maintain, a good, consistent fire in a tiny little sheet metal chamber. They are going to rust out. They are going to fall apart. They're flimsy. The air flow in them is atrocious. So leave that out. When we're talking about a cost perspective, we really need to be thinking about, I would say $1,200 at a bare minimum for an offset, and the sky's the limit after that, right? I personally do not think you need to spend more than about $1,200 for an offset, but you do you. This one obviously is significantly higher than that, but I'm using it commercially. We're not going to consider the other features on this offset. We're going to specifically talk about offset cookers as a general category. So when we think about an offset, we think about a cook chamber and we think about a firebox, right? So cook chamber, firebox. Leaving it as a general category, uh, we have to start to look at, our metrics here. First one, versatility, near zero. Yes, on some offsets, you can grill on the firebox. I've done it before on the Brazos. It only barely skates by. Let me tell you why. If you're going to do the normal chimney of charcoal and put it in the bottom of the cook chamber, it's not going to be hot enough to sear your meat. Okay, so it's going to be kind of a slow cook anyway, which is not what you want when you're searing. But beyond that, if you build a big fire like you would normally in offset, it's too hot. Flames are too close, fire gets out of control. It's just, it barely skates by, but it's not the intended purpose of that cooker. When we talk about the volume that you can cook on it at once, it's pretty fantastic, actually. Even on the $1,200 smoker, you could still fit multiple briskets, potentially, or a brisket and multiple pork butts, ribs. You can really stack it pretty deep. You do have to be mindful of being close to the firebox or your hot spots, but you can use that to your advantage. I cook sausage over closer to the firebox, so it's done quicker, and then brisket closer to smokestack. Pretty simple, right? It's a lot of fussing around with an offset, but the amount of food you can cook at one time is pretty fantastic. And, when we get into the finished product, it's unassailable, right? It's an offset. It's the gold standard. When you see a brisket, right, you just, in your mind, you think offset cooker, whether it's commercial, backyard, whatever. Lots of YouTube channels focus almost solely on the offset when they're doing brisket or those sorts of things, right? For good reason. It's flawless. You have to fuss around with it a little bit. You have to manage it. You have to baby it. But everything I've ever cooked on an offset, once I knew what I was doing, was fantastic. As I mentioned, kind of invented a category as we went. Um, how easy is it to use, right? And there's a pretty wide variety there too. So the kamado, I would say once you get used to it and kind of how to run it, it's middle of the road, right? It takes a little bit more babysitting and fine tuning, but to be honest, once you get it dialed in, once you really start cooking on them, it's pretty easy. Grills, for smoking, uh, it takes some work, takes some know-how, takes some practice, but they do the job admirably. You are fighting against the very, very thin metal in most grills, and so if you're doing it in the winter or those sorts of things, you may really have to ramp up the heat to compensate. You got to keep an eye on it. It's not the easiest thing in the world to smoke. Now to grill, I would say almost anybody could do it. Uh, Throw your charcoal in there. Either cook it right over the charcoal if it's something real quick, or if you're going to reverse sear, kind of move your charcoal to one side, have a hot side and a cool side, that sort of thing. The gravity smoker couldn't be easier. Load it up, set your dampers, you're done. Set it and forget it, right? So from a cooking perspective, if you are an absolute beginner and you want to just do smoking, it really does not get any simpler than that one. Finally, we have the offset. That one is the hardest to master. You're going to make a lot of mistakes if you've never done it before, and that's okay. Um, you know, as long as you made it to the right temperature, barbecue, even bad barbecue, is better than most other foods when you screw it up. And I firmly believe that it takes a lot of practice beyond all the YouTube videos and things like that. You got to do it yourself. Um, it's a lot of work to babysit an offset, but it's very rewarding. You're cooking over a fire, right? It just feels so primal. And ultimately, it's my favorite way to cook. Yes, it's a lot of work. Yes, it's hot. Yes, it's uh, messy. But I feel like the ends, the finished product, justify the means, the babysitting. So, with all that in mind, if I had to choose one cooker, what would I choose? So, I would have to say, based on my current experience, that some form of kamado probably would be my choice as a backyard cook. Reason being, the sear quality is fantastic. If we're leaving out price, um, then the other categories, as far as output quality and on larger ones, the cook surface is also similarly fantastic. So the versatility really is what sells that thing, right? The versatility plus the finished product being just shy of an offset. And I haven't tried brisket yet, but you know, we'll put that to the test. Um, I, I don't know. It might be the newness of having it. I really, really like the way that thing cooks. I like running it. And I just feel like from a versatility perspective, it's fantastic. We didn't even get into the fact that you can use it as an oven or those sorts of things, right? That's not really the focus of this channel, but it has to be said. That said, for, I don't know, 95% of people out there, the standard backyard grill is probably your best bet. Buy a good one, you know, spend, I would say, at least $100. Get one that looks as solidly built as you can, um, and learn, practice, make mistakes. Because ultimately, I feel like it's kind of the gateway drug of barbecue. You get that grill, you start to do a little smoking, and you taste that smoke on ribs or on a pork butt, and you just want to keep going. You want to perfect, right? And that's what sends you down this rabbit hole of maxed out credit cards and bankruptcy court. We hope you found this video useful. I know it wasn't a 100% answer because, I mean, I answered kind of in two ways, right? But there's kind of my personal preference and then what I also think would be the best recommendation for 99% of people out there. If you got some use out of this or you enjoyed this video, give us a like, subscribe, share it to your friends. If you didn't like it, let us know why, right? We're mostly just doing this for fun. Barbecue is not only a business, it's kind of a way of life for us. It's not our day-to-day job, unfortunately. But you know, I, I live it every day. I love it. A lot of our meals come from the smoker, and so I'm hoping at least some of this is helpful to people. And so if you know somebody that's kind of getting into smoking or has questions, send them our way. In the meantime, thank you for tuning in and thank you for watching Cold War Barbecue.